All right, so I see a few people have already joined in into the conversation. So I can see the chat here, and we also have like a great Q&A button as well. Like if anybody wants to join the conversation and ask any questions in the chat, please do so. And maybe to get the conversation started, while we have like people joining in, if you want to mention in the chat where you're joining us from, that would be great. We've got about an hour together here, and so looking forward to spending the evening with some awesome winemakers and vineyard owners to chat about all of our favorite thing, Tidal Bay. So yeah, in the chat, like put where you're from while we're getting people logged in, and we get the session started here in a few minutes. Great. Okay, we got Jackie from Dartmouth. Oh, Dan and Dee and Melissa from Port Williams. I think I recognize those folks. Excellent. And we got, Rowley's joined us to the Q&A. Marcy from Cole Harbour, welcome. Tanya from Grand Pré, thank you for joining us. Brody's joining us as well. Hello. All right, we got Cheryl from Mineville. I don't even know where Mineville is. Cheryl from Mineville, Rhonda from Sackville. Welcome, everyone. Just give it a few minutes while we get, make sure we have everyone joining us here. There's that awesome Q&A button as well here in Zoom. So throughout the evening, if you want to join in with a question or just like add to the conversation, I would love to keep this kind of as conversation as possible. Please join in the Q&A. I'll be kind of monitoring the chat and the Q&A. And we got Brenda and Scott from Hammonds Plains. Welcome. Pretty exciting as I was, and Maureen and Linda from Brighton, welcome. Great to have you here. I tell you, I was a little bit nervous getting ready for this. Like it's just seemed like so long since we've gathered like virtually or in person, and a little bit nervous kind of getting ready for it. Welcome Maureen and Dave from 9 Mile River. I hope everyone has like a glass of wine close to them as we begin this conversation, and ready to, good. Okay, I've got 3. I was like really well prepared. I got all of your Tidal Bays with me here this evening. So really excited to start the conversation. And Lynn from Halifax, excellent. Terry from Great Escapes, that's great. So we got some really wonderful folks on the call today. Tracy from Port Williams, thank you everyone. And how exciting is this? This is definitely my most favorite time of the year, right? Like I know everyone thinks Christmas is the best time of the year, but for me, my most favorite time of year is May and June when the new Tidal Bays get released. It's such an exciting thing for us as Nova Scotians, and especially to share with the rest to share with the rest of the world. And it's hard to believe, like I was, as I was kind of making my notes tonight, getting ready for this chat, Jurg and Ben and Amber and John, like you probably relate, like it's hard to believe that this would be like the 10th vintage of Tidal Bay since the official launch, which is hard to believe. Like it just seems like it was yesterday that that Tidal Bay was getting in creation and becoming a thing for Nova Scotia. And so when I reflect back on that, it's just amazing. I'm like obviously a proud Nova Scotian and a proud Nova Scotian wine advocate, and to be here and chatting with the 3 of you and everyone joining us is a pretty exciting thing. So welcome everyone. I'm Amy Savoury, and I'm going to be moderating this evening. And with us this evening, we have Jurg Stutz, who's the winemaker at Grand Pré Wines. We also have Ben Swetham, who's the winemaker at Avondale Sky, and we have John and Amber Eikelenboom joining us from 1365 Church Street. And I would have to say, Amber and John, you guys are the new kids on the block in this conversation. So it's pretty exciting to have you here. And so I thought maybe to start us off this evening, we're obviously here celebrating the official launch of the 2022 Tidal Bay. And as I just a few housekeeping issues. Remember, put your questions in the chat, ask your questions in the Q&A. We're going to try to keep this evening as conversation as possible. But as I said, it's like the most exciting time of the year when we launch the new Tidal Bays. And the wine growers of Nova Scotia would describe Tidal Bay, all Tidal Bays, as being lively, fresh fruit, dynamic acidity with some characteristic minerality. And I thought maybe what we could do is start the conversation this evening. I'm going to challenge each of you to describe Tidal Bay to me in 1 or 2 words. So I'm going to start it off with the panelists that we have here, and if the folks out there want to join in the chat, and if you could like throw in 1 or 2 words that mean what Tidal Bay means to you, that'd be really awesome to get the conversation started. So Jurg, I'm putting you on the hot spot. You're in my view. Tidal Bay in 1 or 2 words.
Well, I would say Nova Scotia in a glass, or it's yeah, something like that. Like, yeah, that's what it's
awesome.
for me.
That's great. I have Laura just chimed in and she said therapy, which I think is brilliant. And Madison said the best. Okay, Ben, 1 or 2 words. What does Tidal Bay mean to you?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go with crisp and refreshing.
Brilliant. Absolutely crisp and refreshing. And Maureen just chimed in the chat here and she said sea air, which I think is brilliant. Which, like, on a hot day, that sea air is definitely crisp and refreshing. Okay, Amber and John, 1 or 2 words. What does Tidal Bay mean to you?
I do 3, 4.
Okay, yeah, I will allow that.
Let me do that. An intense taste of Nova Scotia.
Awesome. Totally, right? And we often describe Tidal Bay as being Nova Scotia in a glass, and you're right. There is something intense about Tidal Bay that just brings vibrancy and energy to the palate for sure. Awesome. So yeah, we only have an hour together, which like amazes me, right? Like we could probably chat for hours. Rhonda just chimed in the chat and said sitting on the deck. I think Tidal Bay is definitely that kind of wine that we want to share with friends and enjoy those moments and soak up every little second of summer for sure. So yeah, I thought maybe what we would do, I hope that everyone out there has a glass of Tidal Bay with them. But I thought what we do is maybe spend some time and chat about each of your Tidal Bays. 2021 was an exciting vintage for sure. We've certainly had our challenges in the past number of years, and there was extreme, kind of extreme more heat in 2020, but 2021 just has this energy to it that is really exciting. And I know that 2021 was a unique vintage where we did have a little bit of a warmer start, and then it was kind of really hot and humid and wet, and then we were graced with like a brilliant fall, which kind of brought it all together. But there seems to be a really exciting energy around 2021 vintages, and would really just love to dive in it with each of you in terms of what you think 2021 brings to the Tidal Bay portfolio and kind of what it means and what it means to you. So you know what, I'm gonna stop talking, and I don't know who wants to go first. Should I just pull from the hat, or anyone want to dive in?
We can go first. This is actually our second Tidal Bay Zoom call. So I think the first time we were there, kind of there for comic relief because it was our first time. However, we have 3 offerings that we have Tidal Bay because because we were supposed to be open in 2020. So we had a 19 already, a 20, and then a 2021. So everything was a little bit different, the same, but different. We actually used 4 different grape varieties this year, and you couldn't have put it better, Amy, the way that the growing season was. I mean, it was hot and intense, and then humid and wet, and then the fall, it just knocked the socks off you. You know, it was nice and warm and really felt cozy. with our offering this time, it's actually a middle of both of our previous offerings, which was great, except we used 4 different varieties of grapes because we had such a great growing season. The Geisenheim 318, Lackady, Savel, and Chardonnay. We had Chardonnay in our very first Tidal Bay, and then for the 2020 we took it out and added more Geisenheim. That was my doing, but because I like a little sweeter than a little crisper. So, but this one is a nice happy medium with it.
That's excellent. And it's so interesting, right? Like I can only imagine how difficult those decisions are when you're like trying to create the Tidal Bay, like what grapes you're going to put in, and not only choosing your own preferences, but the guest preferences as well. And so interesting, but it seems like Lackady has been definitely in there for all 3 of your Tidal Bays. So it kind of seems like it's a backbone for you to a certain degree.
It is, and it grows really well. I mean, I think that's what's key about Tidal Bay is that it's all homegrown. It's all of our hard work on our vineyards, on our properties. It's our blood, sweat, and tears in it. Not a lot of tears, I would hope, but more happy times and more, glasses of wine. But it's a really great offering of what we can grow here in Nova Scotia. I mean, we're a great wine region, and it's just getting more and more popular, which is really exciting.
And it resulted in 2 single varietals coming out of those 4 grapes. We have a great single varietal, the Geisenheim's on the deck, and the Chardonnay's a single varietal, and then we put them all together, and it just clicked so easy. It was nice. Very simple.
It's like a recipe. Everybody's got like the same kind of ingredients, but everyone's got their own spin. They're like, and that's what Tidal Bay is. It's made with your own individuality and love and what you are offering at that time. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think that like one of the words that I just often use to describe Tidal Bay is that it's art, really. Like the obviously our growing climate gives us with the style, but every winery and every winemaker kind of has that creative signature that they put on it, and it's really special. I just had a sip of yours, and it's brilliant fruit and really fresh and vibrant, and yeah, you can totally sense that the Geisenheim impact in there for sure, but then also that kind of roundness from the Chardonnay, which is brilliant.
Thanks. Yeah, we took the Chardonnay out last year. We put her back in this year. It likes it here, so she just demanded that, and I say she, could be a he, whatever. They wanted to be back in. It was a good crop, so you use your best fruit.
That's great. That's great. Maybe just to keep the conversation going, Ben, maybe we could go to you to your 2021 Tidal Bay. It's really interesting. So you've been a part of Tidal Bay for a number of years now, and it's always interesting when I look at the blends that you produce every year. There certainly is like some backbone to your to what you choose to put in there, and it's always seems to be there's a little Lackady, Geisenheim, so with same with Amber and John's blend, and then sometimes you flip-flop with Ortega and some other varieties. So it'd be interesting to see how you made your decisions this year in terms of the 2021 Tidal Bay.
Yeah, so in order to talk about it, I'll have to crack a fresh one here.
Oh, look, I got a can too.
Yeah. So we've got Tidal Bay in cans now, as many of the wineries decided to take that plunge this year and put the Tidal Bay in the cans. And there's something special about that little sound right there. It always means it's a good time coming. So for our Tidal Bay, it's kind of funny the way that it evolved, because we started out making Tidal Bay, and the unofficial first vintage was 2010, and the only white grapes that I had access to were were Lac-Di Blanc and Geisenheim 318. And so that was my initial blend. And then as the years have come on and we've done more planting at our vineyard at Avondale and have more access to fruit grown by other grape growers throughout the valley, South Shore and the North Shore, we've been able to kind of flesh out that blend a little bit more, add some more depth to it, and of course every year is a little bit different. Some years we just don't have access to some grower fruit, whether it be from some sort of unfortunate event in the vineyard or what have you. So there's always a little bit of an evolution there as far as what grapes I have to work with. And so one of the things that our Tidal Bay has never had is any of the New York Muscat element, which many of the other Tidal Bays have, and it's a very distinct element to some Tidal Bays versus others. And I'm personally, I quite like the intense aromatic that Ortega and New York Muscat can bring. But for ours, we didn't have any, so I couldn't use any. And then so for our customer base, the people who were buying our Tidal Bay, there was a lot of feedback that they were less. That was something they really liked about ours in particular, was that it didn't have that. That is not to say that like I quite like the ones that have it. And I mean, obviously I like mine as well. But that was something just like ours being on kind of almost the opposite end of the aromatic spectrum. And really it's great to have Jurg here because his is kind of on the more aromatic spectrum. And then mine is on a very different, like a more kind of savory side of the Tidal Bay spectrum. So it's great if everybody, is enjoying different ones tonight. You get to experience sort of like the extremes as far as like aromatic intensity of Tidal Bay with kind of mine at one end and Grand Prix at the other. And so, yeah, as far as it came down to the blend for 2021, like you said, your description of the vintage was super accurate, exactly what we saw at our estate vineyard. An event that happened for us that didn't happen to all of the vineyards, thankfully for them, is we actually had a really intense hailstorm in July where we had like marble-sized hail raining down for like 10 solid minutes, and then about 5 days later, another one. And it really just shredded the canopy of some of the grape varieties, and it was only due to like a really hard work of the vineyard crew that they were able to keep those vines in good shape and get everything nice and ripe and kind of recover from that. It was fortunate that it happened early enough that it didn't directly damage fruit, because a hailstorm like that later on could literally split the berries and ruin the entire crop. So we were very fortunate that the timing of it was early enough, and the hard work of the folks out in the vineyard, they were able to keep our vineyard in great shape. And then, like you said, that beautiful fall allowed us to get things nice and perfectly ripe.
That's amazing, though, that storm only affected really kind of your peninsula. That's amazing. Like,
Yeah,
because we tend to think of Nova Scotia as like being small and all the same growing region. I think it brings perspective that even though we may only be 30 kilometers from each other, that we're challenged by different things.
yeah, and I mean, the one thing you can be sure of when it comes to growing grapes in Nova Scotia is that every year is going to be different, and there's going to be a new challenge every year. But so that was ours certainly for last year. But it was great that we were able to kind of power through it and come up with a great crop. And so my blend tends to always be based on Lac-Di Blanc, which we have a fair bit of on site, as well as some Vidal, which we now grow on site as well as get from a grower. And then the Geisenheim 318 we're probably the oldest planting of that grape variety in Nova Scotia, being planted since 1987 on our site. And so they really, that grape gives a really nice kind of saline mineral note to the blend with our kind of unique gypsum based subsoils. You really get a kind of crisp minerality and then a sort of nice crisp green apple kind of, and a bit of citrus from that particular variety. In the case of my Tidal Bay, I always make sure that any sweetness that you get from it, and of course all Tidal Bays are going to be dry to off dry, not sweet wines, but any sweetness coming from that is actually from like natural grape sweetness from ferments that I stall out with that natural kind of initial grapey fruity note to balance out the other components that are fully dry ferments that when you blend it all together, you get, I think, a little bit more intrigue, a little bit more complexity with all those different varietals. And then of course we have some Ortega, which is a very aromatic grape, just to kind of punch up some fruit and give a bit of tropicality. And then we have a little bit of Petit Milo, which is a newer grape variety to Nova Scotia. We've got one of the oldest plantings of that as well. And it is almost Sauvignon Blanc like in that it has kind of more gooseberry, kind of more savory herbal kind of characteristics, and so you get a little bit of that from that grape.
Amazing. It's I drove out there this afternoon to pick up a bottle, and it's like one of my most amazing drives is going to Avondale Sky, right through the pastoral hills and everything else. And it always amazes me how large your rootstock is, right? It really kind of impacts like how old some of your vines are, and I completely can sense that in some of your wines indeed. And that is, it's so interesting to hear you talk about those grape varieties and all the components that make up your Tidal Bay, and as well as like I think what and please feel free to put in the chat, everyone. Like, it's amazing that you don't really think. Like, I just get to enjoy it from the consumer side, where what's in my glass is what's in my glass, and I get to enjoy it and drink it. And John and Amber and Jurg, I'm sure it's the same for you, or it's more complex than that from your angle, right? Like, it's about different vinifications and different yeast that you use and different treatments. And we are just the bearers of the good news at the end, really, right? When it's when it's in the glass. So we think that it's just a simple process, but a lot of thought and complexity goes into what actually ends up in the bottle at the end of the day, Ben.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we're just the bearers of the good news here, right? We're just we just enjoy it. And I think the other thing that just coming up from, we know that Tidal Bay is like so uniquely Nova Scotian and so special to us, and something that we should all celebrate and advocate for, that we have a wine region that has come together as a collaborative to produce something so special that is uniquely Nova Scotian. But I think the other kind of special thing about Tidal Bay is the diversity of grapes that they're all made from, right? Like, there's over 20 different grape varieties that are allowed in the blend, and I think that allows sustainability for us as Nova Scotia, and kind of in terms of we talk about like mono farming all the time, but we don't talk about it from a grape perspective at all. And so it's really great to see these unique varieties being put in the blends in a style that is uniquely Nova Scotian at the end, that still has that, all of the things that we're looking for.
Output.
It also has to go with the panel as well. I mean, we all have to go before the panel. There are certain specifications that you have to have and meet within, and yet we all have a different recipe, which is fantastic.
Yeah, totally, right? Like, it's such a process. So we just had a question that came up in the chat here. Like, when do you start making the new vintage, and how long does it take? So from you typically from harvest to when do you do the final blends?
Well, for us, it already starts, this time of the year, actually. Like, we already decide now which block are going to be dedicated for the Tidal Bay production. The reason we do that is because there is a limit to the yields so which is limited to 4 tons the acre, and it's always the quality of the end product in mind, right? So, for instance, a Lac de Blanc, you know, in a good year, you can easily do 5 tons, even 6 tons per acre of grapes. But again, if you know that it's going into Tidal Bay production, then already with the pruning at the beginning of the season or before the growing season even starts, you can prune it back a little bit more, so you have less buds, less fruit at the end of the day. And then throughout the season, when you look after your vineyard, you can do certain things to make adjustment to the yields, to the quality of the fruit, and so on and so forth. So it does certainly start, you know, right from the beginning of the season too. And then in our case anyway, we we ferment them all separately. So we would pick them at different times, like not all the grapes that we use in our Tidal Bay are picked at the same time, but they're picked throughout the season, throughout the fall. And usually Lac de Blanc is the first one for us. And I mean, what we particularly look after is the acidity levels. And actually we were a little bit surprised in 2021 because it was so warm. And even into September, we had, as far as I remember, we almost had 30-degree days at the end of September, right? So it was the ripening process was very quickly. And what happens during the ripening is that the sugar concentration usually goes up and the acidity goes down. So we really have to make sure, particularly for the Tidal Bay, because we do want to retain a certain amount of acidity, we do need to harvest the grapes with enough acidity. So we got a little bit surprised, and we were struggling a little bit to get enough grapes in for the Tidal Bay production. And then it's throughout the season, we just, you know, usually it's Lacadie first, then Seyval, and then at one point we get the Muscat, Ortega, and usually the Vidal is the last one for us. And those are the 5 grapes we are using. And we do ferment them separately, use different yeasts for the different batches. And then after fermentation, we keep them separate for as much as we can, but at the same time, if we have a little bit of leftover, let's say we ferment a batch of Lac de Blanc and we can fill a tank, but have a little bit left over after filling that tank, we would start a Tidal Bay tank. So everything that's left over would go into that Tidal Bay tank. So same for the Ortega, Muscat, whatever it is, whatever comes in throughout the season. And but then the real start of the blending maybe happens in December, January, something like that. And that's when we take, you know, we take our blended tank that we already have, but then we start adding to it. Like we add more Lacadie, we add more Ortega, more Muscat, and so on, until we really have it, you know, nailed down to where we want to have it. And for us, throughout all the years, it was always the 5 same grapes. There was one year we added Chardonnay, which made the 6th grape, but we always have the 5 grapes, again, Lacadie, Seyval, Vidal, and Muscat and Ortega. So those are our 5 grapes. And then, yeah, usually the tasting panels, they start to meet in December throughout the winter, once a month. So we start putting our blends together and submit it to the tasting panels. Usually we don't make the December tasting panel, but we try to be ready for the one in January. So we make sure we have a sample ready for January. And then it always depends our inventory level as well. Like if you still have a lot of inventory, we might push it back by a month. But yeah, so typically in, you know, January, early March, or yeah, February, early March, we know what the blend is going to be, and hopefully it's approved by that time. And then as early as, you know, April, we usually do our first bottling of the new vintage. And yeah, and lots of steps in between, I guess, but yeah, it's kind of it in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, it totally, like it is kind of crazy to think that like you even start in the winter with pruning, right? Like we like in terms of, because I imagine you've kind of been producing a Tidal Bay since the soft launch in 2010, and it would be like, it's amazing to hear how much Tidal Bay has probably impacted your winemaking decisions throughout the years, like in terms of how large it is a part of your portfolio now and how important of a piece it is to that message of Nova Scotia wine.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely true. And also when I look at, you know, what we planted over the last 4 or 5 years, it's very often it's those Tidal Bay varieties. And no, it's absolutely totally changed the game for us for sure.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so we haven't gotten to your Tidal Bay yet this year, but there is just a question in the Q&A that I thought maybe I'd address now. Brody says, sorry, so exciting to see Tidal Bays in cans this year. Ben and Jurg, how do you feel about seeing your price product presented in smaller, innovative formats? Do you think it means more Tidal Bay in more consumers' hands? And John and Amber, do you plan on joining the can game?
Yeah, I can definitely say that like we're very excited at Avenel to have the can. Looking at, you know, from the point of view of other canned wine products out there on the market, what most of the wineries have been seeing is that the can sales don't really chip into your bottle sales so much as support them. So it isn't, I mean, maybe the same customers, but they if anything, they're just buying more wine, both in cans and bottles. Not really just kind of buying cans instead of bottles. It's obviously a super exciting format in the sense that it is so very portable. It's way faster to chill it down. It's even more environmentally friendly, given that a can weighs next to nothing. So shipping costs and of course like carbon footprint is much less than a glass bottle. It's entirely 100% recyclable. So there's all those things, and just being able to take a can with you when you don't want to open a bottle that you feel like you have to finish within 3, 4, 5 days before the wine may start to go bad. So you can just open a can that's basically a couple of glasses of wine, and then not worry about it. So it's also really great. We've noticed that the restaurants are very, very excited about the cans, because they, for the same reason, if they're, especially restaurants that don't necessarily pour a lot of wine, they don't have to worry about any spoilage by opening a bottle and then having a week or 2 go by before they pour another glass. They can just sell the can to the customer, and so that's another super exciting thing about the can.
And I think, on top of, Ben mentioned it might be the same customers, but I also think it brings new customers to the wine section or wine category. So it's and I think mainly maybe young people that want to try something maybe for the first time, and they, rather than buying a bottle, they just grab a can, and they don't have to spend $20 or whatever it is. They can spend $7, $8 or something like that, and just try it for the first time. So I think it does open up the market as well to a younger crowd. And like, who are we kidding? Like, there is a big trend towards ready to drink products and things like that. So I think we lose out a lot if we're not in that segment, and if we're not into the canned products.
Yeah, that's great. And so this would be the first year that Tidal Bay was approved for that format as well. Yeah,
That's
great.
right.
So John and Amber, are you joining the can game?
Well, I will never say never to portable wine. Let us be honest. However, anybody that's ever been to my winery knows I always say corks are for quitters. However, in social drinking, because we all know what I think wine pairs with as well. Not killing your kid, laundry, all those things. Because we're a boutique winery, this was supposed to be John's retirement We all know how that all turned out because it took off, which is a great thing. We're very pleased, but it's baby steps. It's, you know what, this is our third Tidal Bay offering. We only opened in 2021. They're great. Everything that Ben and Jurg had said, it's great reasoning. Absolutely. We're just, again, we're the babies on the street. And John and I really can't say that about pretty much anything in our 50s and 60s. So I'm enjoying new kid on the block, baby steps, that kind of thing. But there's great reasons to have that offering. But as I said, there's never been a time that I haven't, unless I'm a driver, there's never been a time that I can't get through the wine myself. Or I share with my friends.
That's right. And Tidal Bay is the perfect wine to share with friends, right?
It really is.
It totally is.
It hits every note. It's for the ones that like the sweeter wine. It's for the ones that like a drier wine. Like it's a perfect kind of marriage of both. So if you're in a pinch and you don't know what to bring someone, you bring them Tidal Bay.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, Amber. And I think it really chimes with like Ben was talking about earlier, that there's such a spectrum of Tidal Bays, like even though they all fit within like the same parameters, they all fit within the same wine style and the same standards, there's such a spectrum. And I've always said, what's better than one Tidal Bay is 3 Tidal Bays or 4 Tidal Bays or 14 Tidal Bays, right? Like you need to try them all. You can't stop at just one, because it's really representative of like all kind of styles and tastes, but within the same standards and the same style.
Yeah, I mean, who can say, what region can say? I mean, other than France, with their champagne, and none of us are allowed to say champagne. We have to say Spark. Well, like, I mean, we are the only ones that can say Tidal Bay. Like, I mean, we're on that level now. Like, I think that's pretty impressive. I think that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, and Amber, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's one thing that excites me so much about what we've created here in Nova Scotia, is that we have something so unique. And I'm trying to think, I mean, I obviously, it brings me joy to my heart anytime Nova Scotia wines are like written in any media anywhere. But it would have been a number of years ago. And one of the wine writers from like Wine Align said that at the, I'm pulling off the top of my head here, but like at the intersection of the two adages, that small things come in great packages and great wines come from fringe places, you'll find the Nova Scotia wine industry. And I think it's so true, right? Like great wines come from difficult places. Like that's what brings tension and intensity to the wines. And when being as small as we are, to collaborate as a group to create something that represents the entire region is so special, like so special. And like as a Nova Scotian, first and foremost, I make sure that I share that story with everyone, because that is the story that needs to be shared, that we have created something that is so definitively Nova Scotian. And no matter what 14 you're trying, that same vein of energy runs in every glass. And that is something that is just like probably the envy of many wine regions in the world, right? Like there's few wine regions that have found that definition before. But we found it here and we created it as a collaborative. And I think that's really, really special. I remember Tony Aspler was at the 2012 like launch of the Tidal Bay, like when kind of the official launch happened. And he said, mark my words, Tidal Bay will be to Nova Scotia what Sauvignon Blanc was for New Zealand and what Shiraz was for Australia. And I totally feel that. Like, and I don't know if anybody else out there in the chat wants to chime in with that, but this, like, it's definitely defining us as a region. I think that's really, really special that we can say that as a collaborative and as a group.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, we're out there trying to keep our crops from freezing. Ben had a hailstorm. I mean, there's not very many regions that can have all that intensity of weather. And Jurg, I can't imagine you haven't had some weather, your fair share of weather as well. You know what I mean? Like we have the intense heat, And then all of a sudden we've got frost like twice on either side. You can have it in June and then you can have it again in September. Like it's all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what makes, I think that's what makes us exciting, and that's what makes our wines exciting, right? Like we're resilient. Like I always said, like Nova Scotians, right? Like there is character to Nova Scotians because you never know what the weather's going to be like from one day to the next. And I think that same character follows through in our wines as well because of all the challenges that we go through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Also, just back to the idea of the Tidal Bay, I think it also makes it very easy, you know, once we decide to promote ourselves outside the province, like if you have, like you say, like it's something such unique for Nova Scotia, I think it makes it very easy for us to go outside and do the step and promote something that we all believe in and we all know we can do really well. And it's easy to do if you have the one product you want to focus on, for instance, right? Like, of course, there is, you know, excellent sparkling wines we do here as well, but you know, the one white wine that you need to have from Nova Scotia is Tidal Bay. And so I think it's just a brilliant concept all throughout, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like obviously, like being at NACC and in tourism, right? Like you often, the first question you ask anyone from outside the province is like, okay, name one thing Nova Scotia is famous for. And they'll always say like lobster, right? Or seafood. And so it makes so much sense that we now have a wine that's a natural partner to that they can then like kind of bring that concept of what grows together, goes together, and really make it easy, right? Like, so if you're having Nova Scotia seafood, this is obviously a brilliant partner. I mean, Tidal Bay is obviously pair with much more than just Nova Scotia seafood, but it just brings it together like so naturally that like it's kind of, you know, hand and fist. Like they're just such natural partners. I've always said, why squeeze your acidity over seafood when you can drink it? Like, why waste the time squeezing it when you can just grab the glass and you can drink it, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, Jurg, I'm sorry. I'm just going to come back to you. I know that you did chat quite a bit about like that you've stayed true to the same kind of blend. You've veered off slightly when you added Chardonnay the 1 year, but you've always had the same 5 grapes: Lacadie, Seyval, Vidal, Ortega, and Muscat. And so what was, how were your decisions made here for the 2021 vintage?
Well, we look at different things, I guess, and it always comes down a little bit to inventory levels as well. Like we always have to see, you know, what are we able to get in any particular year. So if we have a little bit more of this and a little bit less of that, we try to accommodate that in our Tidal Bay blend as much as we can. However, I have to say that Tidal Bay is certainly our priority overall. So we definitely try to get as much volume with the blends and the varieties we need for the Tidal Bay first and foremost. But yes, and then again, other than that, it's what do we have? We look at the acidity, we look at flavors, the balance overall, just like everyone else does. And I think for us, very important is the consistency as well. I guess that's why we really have we stuck to these 5 grapes, and yeah, we just want to, you know, people to recognize a Grand Prix Tidal Bay when they taste it, and year after year. Like we don't want to fluctuate too much from one vintage to the next, just so people do recognize it as a Grand Prix Tidal Bay.
That's awesome. And yeah, and you totally do recognize it every year. I think that's your Swiss precision. Like you do watches really well. Like, yeah, I think that's your precision. But it's interesting, Ben, I saw you like shaking your head, and I think it's really interesting, like from a consumer perspective, to hear like how important Tidal Bay is to your portfolio of wines. So I know I brought a group of students to Grand Prix this year, and we kind of chatted with Cecilia about how important Tidal Bay has become, and that's a priority. Like we're going to make that our priority, like from our growers and everything else. And it'd be really interesting to hear Ben and Amber and John, like how important is Tidal Bay to your portfolio of wines, and like when do you start making those decisions?
Yeah, definitely for us, like Tidal Bay is job one every year for sure. And it kind of waffles between being our best selling wine and our second best selling wine, with our other, like the Geisenheim, that is a slightly sweeter wine in the form of Bliss.
Of course, I was
But
gonna say.
yeah, Bliss is also a very, very popular one at Avondale, and those two wines make up almost half the wine I make every year.
Wow.
So it's a lot, and it's definitely important, and it's the Tidal Bay. Like I always know exactly, what Bliss is going to be, but Tidal Bay is always the focus of, okay, like how are we going to put this together? Like what are the best pieces? Once ferments are through, and you get a better grasp of, okay, like this turned out perfect, and this turned out perfect, and this turned out perfect. So those are going to go together into the Tidal Bay blend. And yeah, I would say any given year it's 20 to 25% of the wine we make at Avondale.
That's amazing. Like for a concept that was like kind of just really born like 10 years ago, really, like in terms of that it becomes that big a part of the portfolio. Now, John and Amber, like from a new winery, how important is Tidal Bay to you right now, like in terms of your portfolio of wines?
It's really important in the sense that it was the first kind of wine that we got to introduce to anyone. We barely opened, and it's your even though you're making wine all year round. We've got our reds barreled. You gotta take care of those. You gotta take care of. You're always working on it. Doesn't matter. But Tidal Bay is like, this is a start, even though we've all been drinking wine through the pandemic and through Christmas and Easter and all those things. But this is the start of summer. This is the tail end of spring. This is why the launch happens now, because it's all ready to go, and we're going to start off on the right foot. Like, cheers, congratulations. Here's our offering. Come see us. That kind of thing. It's putting your best foot forward. You're always going to follow up with the second date looking great, but you want your first impression to be the best one. And that's what Tidal Bay is. It's like everyone just said, you want to pick the best quality of grape. You want to look after it. You want to have your best offering. And we do numerous taste testing. And you know what? I used to think, oh, this is going to be so much fun. All that. I have to spit it out. I'm not happy about this. Like, that's not how I thought this was going to go down. I thought that this, but you want to get to the best level. You want to have the best offering. So that's honestly, Tidal Bay is our first. It's like, we've been here. We didn't go away. You can bang on our door, even on Christmas Day, and we'll get you your bottle. That's the joy of living on the winery in the vineyard. But it's the introduction to have it out, and we do such a wonderful job collectively bringing it out to the public, like nationally. And, I'm thinking, touches of international, because Nova Scotia is quite the region anyway. So it's our best foot forward right at the start. The rest of the wines are amazing. Like, we all have amazing wine, but this is our jam. This is our little piece of Nova Scotia. This is an introduction to what we can do here in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, totally. So I did have a question that popped up in the Q&A, and they wanted to know, Amber and John, what was your favorite Tidal Bay vintage that you produced so far?
Well, ours is a little different. In the beginning, John's was the 2019, because he made that. And anyone who's ever been here, that we went through cancer for a number of years. So I actually made the 2020. I was very proud of that. So the 2021 is actually dead in the middle. So it's the 2021. I might have went a little too much on the sweeter end, but I like the sweeter wine. So,
Try it.
Well, yeah, anyway. So the 2021, that's the middle of the road. That's the best of what we have to offer. And in saying that, we had a 2019 and a 2020. and we only had 1 year to get rid of like all of it, not get rid of it, but fire sale. No, we had so much that was there, and I mean, it's almost gone. So people liked it dry, they liked it less dry. Like it was a wonderful experience. So I'm going to say that. Are you going to say anything?
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's all right. Yeah.
John agrees. John agrees.
Yes.
Ben, could you favorite vintage of Tidal Bay, Avondale Sky Tidal Bay?
Oh, there's been so many.
I know. Yeah. When did you guys first produce your Tidal Bay?
So 2010 was the first year for us.
First year.
I would say that I think 2015 was my number one, but 2021 is a real close runner-up.
Yeah, like I totally agree, and I don't know if anybody else agrees in the chat if you're drinking some 2021 Tidal Bays right now, but there was something really special about this vintage, like pretty exceptional indeed. Yeah. Jurg, what about you? Favorite?
It's hard to say for me. I would say the latest vintage is the best vintage, or
Always.
in general, always, yes. No, I mean, we do put a lot of work into it, and we really want to try to do our very best when it comes to Tidal Bay. So we really, we go through a whole series of a lot of different tastings and try different blends and all that. So we absolutely try to do our very best when it comes to Tidal Bay. So, there is slight nuances from vintage to vintage, but overall, again, we certainly try to have that consistency. I guess I would maybe prefer a Tidal Bay from a cooler vintage in general, whereas maybe 2021 was a little bit the warmer vintage. So, a little bit more body maybe than in other years, a little bit more complexity and flavor. So maybe a cooler years might be my preferred vintages, but again, like we try to keep the differences from year to year very minimal, I guess. So yeah.
Is that like picking a favorite child?
Yeah, I know, exactly. That was such an unfair.
I don't think my sons would appreciate that. I don't think I can pick one. They all go really, really well with everything.
Yeah. It was a very unfair question. Scott just put in the Scott Peregrine just put in the chat that your last year's vintage was spectacular, and that he's looking forward to 2021. And I think it's amazing when you because it's still like Tidal Bay, it's still pretty in its infancy, and so it's amazing to kind of track it through the years. And there's been a lot of like trials and tribulations over the year. Like there's been challenges, right, since the frost of 2018, and then the cold vintage of 2019, and then 2020 being so warm. And like I remember sitting on the panel for Tidal Bay, and like just 2020 was just an anomaly, right? Because it was so warm and so broad and so tropical, and now 2021 it's like this beautiful kind of like in between. And it's, I guess, one of the things that I love about wine the most is that it's a lifelong journey of learning from a consumer perspective, that we're never going to know it all. And you know what, just when you think you got it nailed, like rewind, because it's new vintage and it all starts again. And I think that's the exciting part of it, especially going through the Tidal Bay journey, is seeing how it adapts through the years and through each vintage, and how you all start in the winter adapting for that vintage and going through the through the ferments. Pretty incredible. Like we're lucky from a consumer side. That's why I'm a wine drinker and not a winemaker at all. too much stress. So I know that we're cognizant of time. It's 8, like we're close to the end here. I can't believe it. I'm just gonna throw it out there maybe to the crew that's joining us. If there's any questions or comments, to throw them in the chat now. And I thought maybe I'd end on one last question each of you while we're waiting for comments to come in. But I thought I'd ask, so here we are, like kind of 10 years after the official launch of the first vintage of Tidal Bay. Where do you see Tidal Bay in 5 years?
World dominance.
You in every province? Is
Yeah, that
Yeah?
would be great. Yeah, I think that would be absolutely great if we could really see Tidal Bay in every province, and hopefully we're starting to see some even outside of Canada or more outside of Canada as well. That would be awesome. Absolutely.
We've got
Yeah.
a great name, Nova Scotia. I mean, you know, even through the pandemic, everything, just the way that we conducted ourselves through the whole things, Nova Scotia strong, all the, like, it's just how we grow our wine, how we conduct ourselves. And we're making great things, and we're working with, you know, what we have. You know, it's the best quality, and everybody on here said we're only putting our best effort into this. Like, it's not anything that we're not completely and utterly proud of. So
Yeah. Ben?
I mean, I don't know if we'll get there 5 years, but I'd like to see it everywhere.
Okay, good.
Uh,
Good.
But yeah, and I mean, I think hopefully like people enjoy the Tidal Bay from a can, and I hope that we still see that 5 years from now, and that people are enjoying it. You know, not just in every part of Canada and every wine consuming region on the planet, but also just being able to have it be in that super portable format, like everywhere, as in like on the beach, on the boat, at the golf course. Not just it. I mean, Tidal Bay is an amazing seafood pairing wine, but it's also like, it's so versatile because it does have that lower relative alcohol. It's got that little bit of sweetness. It's got that nice, crisp, refreshing acidity. Like, you can throw just about any food at it and it's gonna work. So like every restaurant should have a Tidal Bay on their list, and most Nova Scotian restaurants do now. But I think every restaurant everywhere should have one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And every single restaurant around the world that has Nova Scotia seafood on the menu should have a Tidal Bay on their list. Like, yeah, like seriously, like if they're importing Nova Scotia lobster, there should be a Tidal Bay there as the regional. Yeah. Oh, I've dreamed about that day for many years, and definitely hope that that happens. So we have a few. Scott's just asked in the chat, like, could you produce enough to export and satisfy local demand at the same time? I mean, that's, I guess, the challenge of a small wine region, but
when you're a good farmer, you can get that done. Yes, you can. You just need some land and some vines. And I really think from the start to the finish, yes, Scott, yes, we can. We all can. Yes.
yeah.
Build it and they will come. Grow it and they will drink it.
There you go. Field of dreams. Field of dreams. That's awesome. Marcy said, thank you for your time and perspective. My husband and me are eager to visit the valley and have a glass of Tidal Bay on the back patio overlooking the vineyard. Well, we cannot wait to welcome you to Nova Scotia to have a glass of Tidal Bay. I think it's so important that that we, you know, as like myself, as a consumer, to share the story and how special it is. Because the story of Tidal Bay and the story of what each and every one of you, Jurg, Amber, John, and Ben do through the winter months, through the spring months, through the summer months, and the fall months, totally needs to be commended, because we created something really, really special here in Nova Scotia. And you are like the pride of tourism, you're the pride of the province, and it really should be like, I thank you every day when I have a sip. I often say, why just have a glass of Nova Scotia wine? We can have a bottle, because we're doing it for the children. We're growing the economy one glass at a time, right? Like it not only supports our story and our tourism, but it also supports our economy. And I think that's a really important point to make when we're making those purchasing decisions.
Thank you, Amy. But I have to say, like we also couldn't do it without people like you. You know, we do need the people in education, or we need the sommeliers, we need the restaurant people, and you know, the government people across the board. We do need all those people to help as well. And so I guess the big thank you goes back to you and all the people that listened in tonight, to the consumers, of course, and we couldn't do it without you guys as well.
Yeah, I guess if there's one more adage to add to the small things come in small packs, it's like it takes a community to raise a family. And we are raising a family here in Nova Scotia. So cheers to that.
Cheers.
And
Cheers, everyone.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Cheers.
yeah, cheers. And so I just want to like, there's so many Tidal Bay celebrations happening, like at all of throughout the province and at the different wineries. And I know John and Amber, people may be too late for your celebration, but there's lots of things happening. So please check out the Wine Growers of Nova Scotia's website, because there's so many events that are taking place within the next month that we can celebrate this like Nova Scotia in a glass. All next weekend, I'll be at the Waterfront Park in Wolfville, tasting through 7 Tidal Bays per session. So I think all we can do is just like say cheers to Nova Scotia, enjoy. Here's to like maybe getting back to somewhat normality. Oh, I love the can.
Cheers.
So appreciate your time, Ben. Thank you so much for making delicious some wine. Amber and John, thank you for all that you do. And Jurg, thank you so much for your time. Even though you're not feeling 100%, we appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye. Drink
Bye.
Tidal Bay.